All right, thanks, and welcome to our study. Today, we're going to be speaking about decreasing excessive media usage while increasing physical activity. So our group members today are Kendra Carlton, Eliza Fayer, Emily Story, and Trenee Torrence. Our original study is titled the same as what we originally called our study, which is decreasing excessive media usage while increasing physical activity. The authors are Karen H. Larwin from Gannon University and David A. Larwin from Kent State University, Salem. It is a single subject study design. It is also a changing criterion design. The study is based upon a 14-year-old girl who her parents were looking to increase her physical activity and decrease her internet or excessive media usage. So her coach acting coach was her parents. They took data daily on paper forms, and she earned internet access or media access or playtime through doing exercise in two separate phases of this design. At the end, she actually earned $100 for meeting a BMC goal, which means if she lost the appropriate amount of weight that her parents were seeking, then she earned $100 to spend on whatever she wanted. So next, we're going to hear from Eliza Fayer on the purpose of the study.
So the purpose of the study is pretty self-explanatory from the title, but it had two parts. The first was to increase physical exercise, which was 5 days a week. And the second part was to, at the same time, decrease cell phone usage or smartphone usage, as we call it in the study, and together do them at the same time. So we'll go back to Emily for the materials.
So for the materials we needed, we just needed athletic shoes to exercise, our smartphones, internet access, a computer to download our data into, Microsoft Excel to record our data in, and then we had two additional applications that we utilized to gather both the distance that we exercised, which was called Pacer. It also registered our BMI through our weight. And it also, and the other app was Realize D, which measured how much we utilize our smartphone in minutes and hours per day. Now we're going to hear from Kendra, who's going to discuss our behavior definitions.
This study was written to decrease smartphone usage and increase physical activity of group members to at least 5 times a week. Smartphone usage is defined as holding and manipulating a handheld mobile device that can perform many functions similar to a computer. Smartphone usage includes, but is not limited to, social media such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, texting, searching the internet, and using applications such as games, music, and search tools. Physical activity is defined as bodily movement produced by muscles that require energy expenditure that occurs for more than 45 minutes at a time. Examples of physical activity can include brisk walking, running, and jogging. Non-examples of physical activity include sitting, standing, or leisurely walking. A week is defined as 7 consecutive days, beginning with Sunday at 12 a.m. and ending with the following Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Now here's Trenee with data collection.
As for data collection, we collected data using the mobile applications mentioned earlier, Realize D and Pacer. These two applications were downloaded on all of our smartphones, and it was also used for all phases of the project. Pacer is a system that will be used to track the amount of physical activity that an individual takes place per day. And Realize D is a program that monitors the length of time an individual uses their smartphone. And all data will be put into the Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, where every member has their own specific tab within one spreadsheet on the Google Drive that is a shared document between all members. And next we will have Eliza.
So next I'll talk about baseline. So in the original study, baseline lasted 2 weeks, but due to the time constraints of the semester and getting everything in, we made it about 8 days. We felt that this was pretty stable since baseline was stable for every person across baseline. Baseline began on September 24th at midnight and ended on October 1st around at 11:59 p.m. I know for me personally, it was a shock to see how many hours I was actually on my phone each day, how little I actually exercise. And it was a really good measurement to go off of for the rest of the study. Move on to Emily.
All right, for our intervention data, it was in 2 separate phases. Our first phase began at 12 a.m. on October 2nd. The purpose of the phase was to walk 1 mile per 24-hour period of time for 5 days per week. So this began at 12 a.m. on October 2nd, and we also tracked smartphone usage for 24-hour period of day, and that was every single day. This concluded on October 15th at 11:59 p.m. So it was a 2-week period of time that you had to walk 1 mile per 24 hours, 5 days per week. For phase 2, it began at 12 a.m. on October the 16th. It was a minimum distance of 1.5 miles, also 5 days per week. And it tracked our smartphone usage for a 24-hour period of time, and it concluded on October 29th at 11:59 p.m. So that was also 2 weeks. And again, that was 1.5 miles per 24 hours, 5 days per week, and smartphone usage was tracked for a 24-hour period of time. Next, we're going to have Trenee talk to us about treatment fidelity.
So treatment fidelity was determined by using the Pacer and the Realize D apps. And once again, these apps were downloaded on each of the group members' phone. And the group also used a checklist to determine if the data collected was valid, and then also if it was in agreement with our observers that we had. And data was to be uploaded every 3 days to the shared Google Drive folder. And experimenters also checked for treatment fidelity by comparing the results to the other members of the group. And in that Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, it is like mentioned before, it is a shared document on the Google Drive so that it is easily accessed by all group members. And here is the checklist that we used. As you can see, it is a very short and simple checklist. It asks 5 questions. The first one is asking the type of exercise that took place, the distance completed during the exercise, and then also the amount of time spent on the smartphone in minutes and hours. And then the 4th question is, was the BMI recorded daily? Answered yes or no. And then the 5th question was for our coach or our observer, which simply asks, did you observe the above listed? Yes or no. And next we will have Kendra for IOA.
To take IOA data, each group member nominated a person in their life to act as a coach and ensure that all data was reported accurately and make sure that the IOA data was above 80%. Eliza chose her friend, Stephen Haskins. Emily chose her husband, Grayson Story. Trenee chose her fiance, Kevin Murphy, and I chose my boyfriend, Andrew Hunt. All coaches agreed to work with group members and report honest and accurate data. The coaches verified the participants' adherence to the protocol by answering questions on the checklist that Trenee just showed us. During the study, there were no IOA discrepancies, so we all had IOA data above 80%. Now here's Eliza to review our graphs.
So we wanted to include our graphs of everyone to kind of show the differences between the BMI, the distance, and cell phone usage. So looking at the first graph, it's the BMI. For most of us, it remained pretty stable. It only moved 0.1 or 0.2 points. The exception here is Emily. It was on a decreasing trend the entire study, which is really what was the purpose. And she was the only person in the study to meet the criteria of the study, which was to lose 1.6 points of BMI. So great job, Emily. Next, we'll move to the distance. Kendra and I, if you look at the graphs, it's a little hard to tell, but her and I started with a slightly higher baseline than Emily and Trenee. So this may have made it slightly more difficult for us since we would have had to exercise even more miles than them. Met the criteria for the phases. So for phase 1, we each met criteria of 1 mile per day. And for phase 2, we each met 1.5 miles per day. Barely, but we did make it. Next, we'll move to cell phone usage. Again, Kendra and I started slightly lower, and Emily and Trenee had much higher hours on the cell phone each day. So this, again, might have made it a little more difficult. However, we all decreased cell phone usage throughout the phases in the study. So essentially, we met the criteria. The only criteria we didn't meet was the BMI, which only Emily met. So next, you have 3 different graphs, which kind of overlays all of our graphs together into one. So you can kind of see the BMI and then the distance and then the cell phone usage for each of us. So we'll give you a second to kind of look those over, and then we'll move to Kendra for the conclusions.
To conclude, all participants in this study were able to decrease the amount of average hours spent on their smartphone a day. They were also able to increase the average number of miles walked or run from baseline to completion of the study. For all participants, aside from Emily, the BMI remained relatively stable and did not increase too much or decrease too much. But for Emily, she was the only participant to successfully meet the criteria of the study, which was to lose about 10 pounds or decrease BMI by 1.6 across both phases. Now here's Emily with the limitations of the study.
Hi, so our limitations look like many, but they're not. We were, like I had mentioned earlier, we're dealing with a 14-year-old girl, and we are all adult females. So that's where the majority of our limitations came into play. None of our team members had access to the tread climber that was also used in the original study, nor were we able to stick within a certain mile per hour rating or resistance class because we weren't using a tread climber. We did all of our exercise outdoors and utilized the phase 1 and phase 2 goals, meaning we utilized phase 1 as 1 mile, phase 2 as 1.5 miles as reference for how far we should exercise each day. We also opted to measure BMI versus BMC, and we did so daily versus every 3 days. The reason why we did this was the Pacer app automatically measured it for us. Therefore, it wasn't an added or extra measure for us to take or calculate, given that the app itself did it for us. Due to time constraints, our baseline only lasted for 8 days, although as Eliza mentioned, our baseline was stable prior to beginning phase 1. Our phase 1 and phase 2 both lasted 2 weeks each. However, in this original study, phase 1 was supposed to last 2 weeks, and then phase 2 was supposed to last 3 weeks. But in order to make time for our presentation this evening, we were only able to allow our phase 2 to go for 2 weeks. Additionally, there was not a necessity for us to take daily data on forms. The Realize D and the Pacer apps did this all for us. We just simply took the information through both of those apps and put them into our Excel spreadsheet and put them on the Google Drive, as Trenee had mentioned. Plus, many of us utilize our smartphones while performing exercise for safety purposes, as well to listen to the music. So this was not the case in the original study. The girl was not able to utilize internet access or smartphone in order to do her exercise, but she was in her home versus being out on the streets. We also did not, quote unquote, earn time through exercise, given we are all adults and we utilize our smartphones while we're at work, or we have children, so we constantly have to have them with us. So we did not use it as a basis for contingency. We were just mindful of the fact that we were in a study that was, the purpose of the study was to increase physical activity while also decreasing our smartphone usage, of which all of us seem to have done that throughout the study. And lastly, the participant in the original study received $100 from her parent or coach by reducing her BMC by 3 points. Well, first of all, none of us actually reduced our BMC or BMI by 3 points, so we wouldn't have been privy to the $100. Plus, we did not earn this as a bonus, and we did not dish out $100 to one another for meeting our goal. So those were our limitations for the study. All in all, they were fairly minor in comparison to what we were dealing with. We tried to adhere to the original study and try to be mindful of what the original study's phases were and worked from there. We look forward to hearing your questions, and thank you so much for listening to us today.